afternoon, everybody. It's Felicity from Penguin Teen, and we are back for day 2, well, sort of day 1.5 of our Penguin Teen at BookCon Live weekend experience. We're having panels, we're having giveaways, fun and laughter, and also chatting to authors, some of your favourite authors, both new and some old school authors who are coming back for the very first time with some of their books coming out later this year. So I want to welcome everybody to the chat. I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes to get comfortable, couple of seconds to get comfortable before I introduce our guests, just to let you know that simply by attending this panel today, you can go into the sweepstakes to win one of their, I think actually all of their e-arcs. So if you go to the links in the below section, you'll find all 3 books from our panelists today, and you can win all 3 of them, which is amazing reading ahead. So good luck to you all. Is all I'm going to say. Later on tonight, we have got YA trivia for those of you who are feeling ultra competitive. And so you can join us there for the live stream. We'll be doing that here on YouTube at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow, we have got the ultimate YA 2020 preview show at 6 o'clock. I want to say. Could be 6, could be 7. Got to remember. 7. It's 7 o'clock. See, I'm so excited with all these times. 7 o'clock. And that is going to be, basically, we're going to tell you every single book for the rest of this year and some 21 spring preview books. So you're going to want to join us for that, because that's going to, I'm not going to say sorry, but it's going to ruin your TBR. So sorry, just apologising in advance. And then finally, tomorrow night is a special Sabbath here, Sky Beyond the Storm preview show. Only live, only at that moment, so you have to tune in. So make sure you register for all of those events. Everybody's here. I'm seeing people saying hi in the comments. Hi, Chicago. Hi, everybody. So let's get, you're not here to see me, you're here to see the authors. Let's get to them. Let's welcome to the show the lovely Arvin Ahmadi, Nina LaCour and Adib Khorram. Yay! I need a sound effect, an applause sound effect.
Hi, everyone. I left my soundboard in the other room.
I want that TikTok. Wow.
I do love, Arvin, that you seem to be, for me, the first YA author who now talks to me in TikToks.
I do speak proficient TikTok. I'm working towards fluency.
I love it so much. I love it so much. Well, there's so many things I want to ask, and for everyone who's watching, you can also ask questions. So leave them in the comments below, and I will go back to them and make sure we try and get through as many of your questions, just like a panel at BookCon would happen. So, first of all, Arvin, your new book coming out this fall is called How It All Blew Up. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about it before we get into my questions?
Sure, yeah. So How It All Blew Up comes out September 22nd. And I'm really excited for this book. It's about an 18-year-old boy, Amir Azadi, who is gay and Iranian. And one summer, Amir runs away to Rome, like Rome in Italy. And he has this incredible summer of adventure where he meets people who are just like him. He goes on dates in the Sistine Chapel. He obviously eats his body weight in pasta. But that summer comes to an abrupt end, and you meet Amir on page 1 inside an airport interrogation room at JFK, where he has to tell the story of his summer to an officer, to a customs officer, all while his mom, dad, and sister are being questioned in the rooms next door. The story alternates back and forth between those tense airport interrogation scenes and the more whimsical, sometimes even ridiculous Italy scenes.
Yeah, no, it's a book in-house that everybody has loved and raved about, and we're so excited for everyone to be able to read it. So we're going to ask more about it later, but I want everyone to talk about their books first so that everyone watching knows exactly why we're so excited about our fall titles from these authors. So Nina, next up, Watch Over Me, which was just very recently announced. Can you tell everyone a little bit about it?
Yes. Watch Over Me is a modern ghost story. It's about a girl named Mila, who's 18, and she accepts an internship at a remote farm on the Northern California coast. It's in the Mendocino area, which is a very beautiful, foggy, rugged, mysterious landscape. And she has just placed out of the foster system, and she's eager to be folded into this family that runs the farm. But on her first night there, she sees a ghost on the field. And soon after, all of these memories that she's buried for a long time start rising up and haunting her as well. So the novel continues. Yes. The novel draws on a lot of the Gothic traditions that I've been interested in for a long time. My novel, We Are Okay, explored some of those in a way. It's an isolated setting and a mysterious past and a young woman in distress. But in Watch Over Me, I'm able to take all of those things and make them even bigger and veer into the supernatural and unexplainable. That I still keep all of the emotional stakes and the relationships between the characters as the primary focus. So it's very much a novel in line with my others, but with this new and exciting element.
Yeah, I love that you've just turned emotional ghosts into real ghosts. Like, I just think that's it's such a you thing to do in a way, and it's so beautiful as well. So yeah, this book is so beautiful, and I know that we shouldn't talk about how great covers are, but that cover is so beautiful.
Yes,
it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, I love all three of our covers. I was looking at the promo that went around, and I just thought, Penguin's killing it.
Good job to our design team. There are some fantastic designers at Penguin, and they are absolutely killing it, as you say. So, Adib, last off the list, tell us a little bit about the return of Darius.
Oh my goodness. So Darius the Great Deserves Better comes out August 25th, and it picks up about 6 months after Darius the Great is Not Okay, and it finds Darius in his junior year of high school. He's on the soccer team, making some friends, interning at his favorite tea shop, dating a boy named Landon, and seems to kind of have everything going right for him, but the family's still kind of under some stress from basically traveling overseas, which can be really expensive, and his little sister is starting to get bullied in school, and he himself is like starting to feel a little discontent with all the things he said he wanted, and is trying to grapple with how to kind of choose the future for himself. And it's still very nerdy and still full of lots of Star Trek and tea and Iranian food, because I'm always hungry when I'm eating, and I'm always hungry when I'm writing, not when I'm eating. Usually eating is fixing the hungry. I mean, I usually am hungry when I'm eating as well.
It's just
but always hungry when I'm writing, and I'm always drinking tea, frequently out of my Kermit the Frog mug.
Well, and I was going to say, there's already been a question of Kimberly would like to know is, what tea are you drinking, Adib?
This is a First Flush Darjeeling that my friend Julian Winters got me, that I've been slowly making my way through. Julian Winters, author of Running with Lions and How to Be Remy Cameron and The Summer of Everything. And I'm completely blanking on the new one.
Oh, right.
It was just announced, right?
Yeah, it was.
Coming out
I was going to say, it's
the
with
future.
us.
I don't know what day it is, what time it is, what out anymore. Everything's confusing. Anyway, Darjeeling.
Okay, beautiful. And yay, Julian, who's one of us now. Yay. We love it so much. And Darius, I believe, just got an amazing review. Did I read that? And I want to say it's Kirkus who had the review, but basically called it a masterpiece.
My understanding is that I'm not allowed to say that until June 1st.
Felicity.
So I can neither confirm nor deny.
You know what? It's the 5:30. It's a Saturday. Come on. We're so close to June 1st. I just said one word from that review.
Right.
Whoops.
Yeah.
No one tell anybody.
I know, right?
Well,
time has no meaning.
No, it means nothing. Nothing happened here. There's nothing to see. But I have questions for you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. I wrote the review.
Oh my God, Arvin, are you Kirkus?
I am Kirkus. I am all of Kirkus review.
History finally reveals itself.
We have unveiled it all. Well, I want to ask all three of you, for all three of you, it is sort of a return in a way, because it's been over a year, at least, for you to be writing again and coming back into, I won't say coming back into YA, but, a new book out. What is that sort of like? I guess for the longest return, I would say, Nina, it's been a while. Tell me, it's not to name and shame, but like, what's it like to kind of get your feet back in there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I did actually the other day think, oh, wow, it's been, by the time it comes out on September 15th, it will be well over 3 years since I've had a book out. So that might be the longest. I don't think I've ever done 1 year between books, but I think 2 has been my average. So over 3 is definitely long. And it feels really exciting. I almost kind of forgot what it was like to have a book about to come out, and especially because it took so long for us to announce it. We really sat on that information for a long time. So now it feels like it's suddenly out there after being very quiet and my own for a really long time. But I've been working on it, all this time, just kind of slowly and doing, other projects as well. And I think the last few years I've learned that in order to keep feeling really good about my fiction writing, I want to do other kinds of projects too, which is why I now have a podcast and teach a class on my own and do all this stuff outside of just like me and my computer, because I like being able to communicate with people in other ways as well. So it's been nice, and it's taken the pressure off a little bit to write quickly. And I've enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed my time out of the book spotlight.
Well, and for you, what do you think has changed, or do you feel like anything has changed since you've been out of the book spotlight?
Let's see. I mean, certainly a lot has changed in the world. I mean, gosh, who would have guessed, what existence we're all in right now and everything that we're all going through. So that certainly feels very different. I think it feels really, just to kind of focus on the books, it feels very exciting to have people waiting for the book. I think my audience has definitely grown since We Are Okay came out and got the attention that it did. So it feels very exciting to know that there are people who are really looking forward to reading the book and waiting for it. I do think I'm feeling that in a way that I hadn't before for my past novels.
Yeah. No,
I just my barista from a couple of years ago was like your biggest fan. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
Oh my, yeah. We Are Okay broke her heart, and she loved all of your other books. Her name was Gabby. She lives in Brooklyn. She's a dog walker now.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I just remember we bonded over that because I had just read We Are Okay too. And adored it. So that was her thing.
That is so sweet. That's actually very funny because my barista from the house where I used to live was not my biggest fan, but she was very nice. But she's also a dog walker, and she looks exactly like the cover of Watch Over Me. Like when the design team sent me the photograph that the artist used to paint from. The artist is Pippa Young. She's incredible. When they sent me that photograph, it looked so much like my barista that I had to walk down to the cafe and show her a picture.
Next to her when you're ordering the latte.
Yes, exactly. So
wow. I also just love that there's so much overlap between baristas and dog walkers in the world.
Absolutely, yes.
And Nina LaCour, it seems. Just
and
Nina. 6 Degrees of Nina? Is that going to be the publishing go? Well, Adib, for you as well, this is sort of a return that you didn't almost expect to make, and that you've told me before when we chatted on the podcast that you hadn't really planned originally to go back to Darius. This was sort of, you were one and done.
Yes, I did write the original as a standalone, and then I wrote a whole other book after that, and it was terrible. So I sent it to my lovely agent, Molly O'Neill. She read it, and she's like, afterward we talked about it, and she's like, how honest do you want me to be? And I was like, oh, I'm a theater child. Please be very honest with me. I thrive on the creative process and criticism. And she's like, these are lovely characters. It'd be great if we could find a plot for them. And I was like, oh, okay. What do you think the plot is? And we spent a really long time, and neither of us could really crack it. And so it was like, okay, let's find a different project. And so around the same time, I was doing school visits, and I happened to do some with Dana, my editor, Dana Chidiak, Dana 1. No offense to Dana 2, but Dana 1. And while we were doing school visits, we also did a bookstore event, and someone in the audience asked me if I was going to write a sequel, and I had no plans, but Dana was in the very back of the audience giving me a thumbs up. And I was like, huh. And so after the disaster book, I was like, well, maybe I should try writing another Darius book or something. And it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. And now here we are. So yeah, it's really weird and really exciting.
I mean, I should probably reveal that person in the audience was a plant from Penguin, and that's how we've gotten that down. Yeah, we plant people now to make a deal happen that way.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, Penguin's actually taking some tips from the CIA.
I mean, we are ruthless, and Arvin Ahmadi, for one, knows this. And you were
tried to get them down.
You were in the middle of Rome when our iconic battle broke out, and it sort of is almost, it's very much for me tied to this book. Can you tell us a little bit about the book, of course, but also I love the battle story because it makes me laugh so much.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was just reminiscing about that the other day, and I went back and looked at the tweets, and it all started with, that tweet that Felicity sent out during a meeting with my editor, where she was like, Arvin, your pages are due today. Let us know if you want an excuse. And of course,
this was the piece that was lost in the thing of penguins calling out. We were like, we were going to hide. We were going to help.
Yeah. No, Felicity was actually trying to do me a solid, but obviously Twitter is Twitter, and they took this as immense shade. And so it became a whole thing. People were posting polls. Will Arvin turn in his pages today? And I did, and I responded with this, quote retweet where I was like, dead publisher, comma. I meant to write dear publisher, but I accidentally wrote dead because I was playing you. I was like, not only did I turn my pages today, but I went for a swim. I ate fried risotto balls and all of these other Italian things. Sincerely, Arvin.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, how it all blew up wasn't even on my mind at the time. I was in Italy. I was working on viral revisions, and I was trying to write a draft of this very serious book on immigration. It was going to be a multi-generational family saga. But then my very first weekend there, I walked into a bookstore, and there was this gorgeous bookseller. And I was just like, okay, be cool, just ask him what they're to do in Rome. And I was so not cool, but he was still very friendly and gave me a list of places to visit in Rome. And one of those places, he wrote this Iranian name, Jahan. And so I go to that place, and the bartender is named Jahan. He's this incredible queer Iranian person, larger than life, brilliant, knows more about, he was actually half Iranian, half Mexican, but knew more about Iranian history and culture and cared more about that part of, that part of the world than anyone I've met. And so by the end of the weekend, Jahan was my best friend in Rome. And, the other guy, the bookseller, actually became my Italian tutor because he tutored. And so this gave me this incredible group of queer friends that I fell into and hung out with the rest of the summer. And so while I was struggling with this very serious immigration novel, I was having this summer where for the first time I felt like I had, gay friends that I was spending weekends with and learning from and just kind of coming of age in a way. I didn't get the idea for the book until the end of the summer when I got stopped at an airport and was asked what I was doing in Italy for so long, and basically told the officer oh, no, you clearly think I'm threatening. I'm not threatening, I'm gay, and here's how I can prove it. I this person and this person, and let me tell you about my tutor. And so, it struck me after that I kind of went down that approach for a reason, to be I'm not a threat. I'm not a terrorist. I'm actually quite westernized. And that's where I got the opening for How It All Blew Up, and the rest sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah. No, it's such a beautiful story too. And it's almost that perfect balance of who you are as an author. It's this humorous, light, funny romp. And then it's also tackling really deep issues that need discussing and need to be dug into and thought about.
Yeah, which is the thing. I never wanted to write a gay story about that part of my life that was purely serious and heartbreaking, or purely fun and joy and fluffy, because I felt neither accurately represented the experience. But this story came together the right way.
Well, yeah, and I think for all three of you, the question I have next is balancing that light and darkness in terms of how do you do a story that you want to tell, but also in a contemporary, in a real-world setting, keep tackling the topics that are around us, keep talking about the things that are important to you and to your readers. Is there something that you particularly think about, or is it just I'm writing the story and as it comes out? Is it something, Adib, for you that when you're writing your stories, and Darius' story in particular?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, at heart I'm a very selfish writer, and so I'm pretty much always writing for me, either me in the present or sometimes me in the past. And so when I look at the world around me, I'm always kind of juggling the world as it is and the world as I wish it was. And generally, the world as I wish it was is usually kinder and gentler than ours is. Mm. And I also think, particularly, writing for young readers, I also feel like it's important sometimes to write about the world that they deserve, even if we're not there yet, because then we're planting the seeds of possibility that tells them, you deserve this better world. And, here are a few steps that we can all try to take to make it. Sorry, that sounds really self-important, doesn't it?
No, it's beautiful.
It is. It's so beautiful and so true, though. That's the thing. It's sort of create the world that we want to see, and maybe one day we'll get there. Nina, is it?
Crossed.
Yeah, Nina, for you,
Yeah, that sun will explode, and then the problem will be solved.
Is that light-dark balance that you're talking about, Adib?
Right. The Earth is a self-cleaning oven. The solar system will one day explode in a ball of fire. But Madonna will be beamed into space forever.
But
we're getting very Fault in Our Stars, Oblivion is inevitable territory
yes!
here.
I mean, the heat death of the universe will happen sooner or later.
Okay, I'm going to move on from Adib because we're in a spot now. I need to get...
Wow, that took a turn.
It took a real turn, and I'm going to ask Nina, in terms of for you, adding in ghosts, does that add an extra layer of trickiness to it in terms of balancing the light and the dark? Because now you've got almost literal supernatural darkness happening.
Yeah. Yes, it was. I mean, it was tricky for me. I think I am so used to all of my books being very firmly rooted in the real world. Sometimes a rosier version of it, just like what Adib was saying. But I think that, I don't know. I mean, I also think that my sweet spot as a writer is in the very sad, self-reflective, lonely kind of yearning. And so to add ghosts to that just felt like a very natural way to go, I guess. It was more tricky for me to figure out how to navigate things that are not explainable, like if I should try to explain them or have a logic to them or not. And that's what was the most difficult for me to tackle in the draft. But I think that in terms of balancing the light and the darkness, I feel like I kind of moved through my whole life trying to figure that out and trying to navigate it and think about it. And when I'm writing, I think my favorite type of scene to write is the kind of scene that, something like the character is in pain and yet something very beautiful is happening or something really meaningful. And the character is able to experience that beauty in the world, even through grief or loneliness, whatever that character is feeling. I feel like those moments are so important in my life. And then I love to explore them in fiction as fully as I can, because I think that many of us read in order to find those cathartic portrayals of the things that we all go through. Like we all, have grief and we all have loss and sadness and, are overwhelmed and are isolated at times. And yet there's always something beautiful to find and discover and some meaning to gain from every situation. And so that's what I strive for. And I think kind of just by that nature, it ends up, showing the beauty and the darkness or the light and the dark.
No, it does, for sure. And Arvin, you kind of talked about it before, but in terms of the real balance of sort of a home domestic life versus sort of this international journey and leap, is that something that you were really careful about how you represented each of the different aspects? Were you really, obviously you weren't careless, but was there any sensitivity around what you were saying, how far you were going to go with things? Or did you just sort of tell the story as it was meant to be told?
Well, no, I think I was absolutely sensitive around that. I think with the interrogation scenes, I did a lot of research into kind of other accounts of Muslim being questioned at airports, and I read a lot of those accounts. And I wanted to make sure that I portrayed the real parts, like what they might actually go through, as well as the parts specific to this story. I guess falls into kind of my editing philosophy in general, which I got from an editor on a panel a couple years ago, which was that editing is balancing the author's vision with the reader's needs. My first draft is always very author's vision-y. It's kind of just me dumping my thoughts and feelings onto the page and searching for the heart of the story. But after that, that's when I'm kind of filling in the gaps in terms of research, in terms of pacing and timing and plot and structure, and kind of thinking, how do I make, now that I've got my heart on the page, how do I now make it digestible for the reader? So yeah, I'm definitely more confident with that, I think, in the revision stages. The early stages, I wrote the entire book. The first draft was I wrote as a dramatic monologue from start to finish. It was entirely a monologue, which kind of played into the tradition of oral storytelling in Persian culture, because this character Amir, he's so trying to distance himself from his culture and the stereotypes of his culture, when in actuality, by telling the story of the summer to this officer, he's participating in one of the most Iranian things ever. Even though he's gay, he's still so Iranian, even if he doesn't realize it. And so that, I had to kind of tell the story that way in the most authentic way first, before I then broke it up into pieces, showed the family's points of view, and made them more authentic, based on research.
Yeah. Mm. Well, and for all three of you, sort of jumping off from that point, is that all three of you have heard so much from your readers about your previous works. Is there things that you're excited that you think people will respond to these new books, or hope that they respond to these books from? Nina, is there something that you're really excited for fans to read in Watch Over Me?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as I was writing Watch Over Me, I kept thinking, am I just writing We Are Okay Again and adding ghosts? That idea kept floating around, and I'm relieved to report that it is an entirely different story, and the character is very different, and there's a lot, and everything that led up to it. The backstory is an entirely new backstory, but there are also parallels in a way that I think will be satisfying for readers who liked We Are Okay and who want to read something that will make them feel similar things or have a similar structure. It's also a very spare novel. It also flashes back and forth in time, even though it does so in a different way. And it deals with a lot of the same themes of, family and chosen family, and a lot. It's very internal. There's a big theme of self-forgiveness and, caring for oneself and honoring one's own experiences. So it has a lot of that stuff, but also, it's a new story. It's surprising. And so I hope that readers will love it. I feel really proud of what it ended up becoming.
Yay. And Adib, I'm sure readers have already told you how excited they are for Darius's return, because I've seen that on social media. But
right, it's a little weird. Nina was saying, "Am I writing We Are Okay Again?" And I literally did. I literally did write Darius again, but it's a very different story. It's not Darius goes back to Iran and does all the same things again. Mm-hmm. It's very different, and so I'm really excited, but also really nervous. Because again, I'm selfish. I wrote a story that pleased me. I have no idea if it's going to please anyone else. But I really hope so, and I hope people connect, especially with the feeling of I always felt when I was a teenager, I would make these very big plans, and sometimes they would crash and burn, but sometimes they would work out, and I would do all these things that I said I wanted to do, and I would get there and be ugh, this is kind of disappointing. But I've been telling everyone I'm going to do this, so I'm going to stay the course and stick with it, even though it makes me miserable. And I hope maybe if anyone else has ever felt that way, then they will read this book and maybe feel a little better about that in themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's what I hope. I don't know. I hope people like it regardless. And I hope that if they don't like it, they don't tag me.
Fair. Very fair.
That'll ruin my day. But you heard it here first, folks. You let an author know you hate their books, and the author is going to lay on the floor for the rest of the day. Only getting up to find baked goods or tea.
What if you're not an author and you just do that yourself? Because that's my problem. I don't have an excuse. But Arvin, for you, this is sort of, we talked about it before as a return. You went and did a little bit something different with Girl Gone Viral, and there was a techie sci-fi adventure thing. This has come back to contemporary. Is there something that you're really excited about, that fans sort of, talking to you about their personal stuff? Or is it sort of nerve-wracking to be back in this space and to be opening yourself up in a really vulnerable kind of way?
Yeah, it's funny because very similar to Nina and Adib, I had that same thought of am I writing down and across but making it gay? And that was, in the middle of the summer, I remember I even emailed my editor, and I think I was someday I'm going to write a gay down and across, because it's set in Italy. Gay Italian down and across is what I called it at the time. Just because I kind of felt a lot of those same themes, coming up for me personally at that time. And it wasn't until the end of the summer that I found that kind of fresh perspective on that classic coming of age story. Hero runs away, meets people, and comes home with, a new perspective. With the framing device of the interrogation room. And I actually, so it was largely because I was also reading a book, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, which is an amazing adult novel that was kind of told in that style of like dramatic monologue. And so, to bring it back to your question, I am really excited, and I've already sort of started to see readers of Down and Across getting similar vibes from How It All Blew Up, but at least from very small sample size, reading it a lot faster. So I think that was kind of the exercise and the kind of maybe skill that I picked up from Grow Gone Viral, which was plot and stakes. Like the stakes are higher in How It All Blew Up than they were in Down and Across. I love Down and Across with all my heart, but it was, I think, like a charming, whimsical runaway story with crossword puzzles. And this one is, I think for a couple of reasons, maybe a little bit more fast-paced.
But still beautiful. I mean, all your books are beautiful. That's not to say just because the new one's shiny and bright doesn't mean that behind it is not some great brothers and sisters there on the shelf. So that's all good. Now, before I get to the homework that I gave you three, I'm going to say to the audience who are commenting, and there's a lot of fantastic comments just for you guys to know. A lot of shout outs to Yuri on Ice on the shelf. That is seen and spotted, Mr. Adib.
Thank you.
You can walk us, we can do a shelf tour later of just your Yuri stuff if you like. But before I do that, everyone, please start firing away those questions so that I can pose them to your authors and get those answers for you. But the homework I gave you all was to think of a question on the panel for someone else. So who wants to kick it off? Arvin?
Sure.
Go for it. Let's go alphabetical. Arvin's up.
So my question is for Nina. Nina, you described, so first of all, as you know, I love We Are Okay and was originally planning to just gush about that book for a really long time here. But, I love that you said that Watch Over Me has kind of those same vibes. But then you also described it as a modern ghost story. So that's, really interesting because usually when you think of a ghost story, you think of Victorian times, you think A Christmas Carol, you're not really thinking of it in the modern setting. So what is it about Watch Over Me that makes it modern or particularly of this time?
Yeah, well, first, thank you, Arvin. I'm so glad that you liked We Are Okay. And
can I also add that when you were talking about, this was not part of the plan, but just you were talking earlier about your stories not necessarily being sad and your favorite thing to write being those moments that should be really sad, but something being really hopeful. It actually viscerally, like a couple of specific, like the bowl in We Are Okay, like that immediately came to mind. Your writing is so atmospheric and lush and specific, but I just love that that's so true that you can tell and remember an author's kind of favorite scenes to write.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Okay, so let's see, a modern ghost story. So Watch Over Me, it's set right now, which is, it's cool. I really looked for ghost stories that are set right now but have that kind of gothic classic feeling to them, and didn't find that many. Nova Rensuma's books do that so beautifully. Hers are amazing. And I was able to find a couple films that I found really interesting, but I couldn't find that many. And it was really, really fun to write a story that tried to feel like it was timeless and yet was very firmly set now at the same time. It's lucky for me that the Mendocino area in Northern California has pretty rocky reception. So I got to get rid of cell phones. That was one of the first things that I was able to do in order to make it feel so kind of classic. I don't think that if she had been getting tons of text messages, I would have been able to maintain the atmosphere that I was going for. But I think the most interesting thing about thinking about the book coming out right now, while we're in the midst of this horrible pandemic, is that it's a book that's very much about a shift in life. The character Mila has had her old life in this in town. She's been living with a foster family, two young parents who have raised her during high school, and we only briefly touch on them. She's only there in the first couple pages of the story. But then she goes away to this entirely different place, and she doesn't know what to expect, and life is completely different. And a lot of the novel is about her kind of figuring out what is life going to look like now. And it's a really isolated place. It's a place where is really reliant on herself to make herself feel better when things are hard. Daily rituals are important to me in life and in my fiction. That's part of, you mentioned the yellow bowls, Arvin, like that was such a big part of that book for me, was like, what would that character find in her life? And for Maria, it was the yellow bowls. The big farmhouse where the family members live. Is something.
Sorry, yeah, no, we are just having struggle with the chat. I think we have got a bit of an issue with our feed at the moment, so I'm just going to hold us for a minute.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. I just don't want. You've had such great answers. I didn't want to lose them. So let me just bounce around and see if we can pick up the feed again. The Wi-Fi loves to. It struggles a little bit sometimes. So it was glitch. Yeah, we've hit a glitch mark, everybody, and they're about to catch back up. You guys have come back on stream, so that's great. So we're just waiting for Adib to come back on stream.
What? I'm not on stream? How dare you?
You are there as an ominous Skype logo, and that's all we have. So,
It's an attack.
It's an attack. I know.
I'm plugged directly into my router. I blame Skype, not myself.
No, it's fine.
Now what I'm introducing you as ominous Skype logo Adib Khorram.
I love it.
Everyone who knows me on Animal Crossing knows my new brand of Horizon Bound Trash. Thank you very much.
And see, Animal Crossing, I can't. I don't understand it. I'm too old.
Well, so I think we have similar pop culture tendencies. Animal Crossing.
You are the one on TikTok, Felicity. I'm terrified of it.
This is true.
It's like, I won't even install it on my phone just because I'm paranoid about like the Chinese government spying on it.
I mean,
you just get the roundup from Buzz.
Yeah, true.
Like, yeah,
true.
I pretty much only watch the dogs anyway because I love dogs.
All right, it looks like you guys are a little bit more stable and the connection's back, so I feel like we're a little bit more confident to go on. Nina, we lost you midway through your answer to that wonderful question. So I did love that someone has just nominated that you all should have come back in different outfits, though, and that was a disappointment.
Oh, that would have been great.
Yeah, what a shame. You could have come back in
Arvin 2.0.
There you go. Arvin's got the hat on.
Because my hair is a mess.
No, I love your hello. It's quarantine hair.
I don't want to hear any complaints about hair from anyone that's got pro hair, okay? Let's be fair.
Oh, Adib.
Well, Nia, you did have a question for Adib, though, I believe.
I absolutely do.
Did we lose her?
You were talking about how, for like the yellow bowls were an anchor and we are okay, and similarly in Watch Over Me, the anchor is...
Okay, yes. So the anchor is...
I just needed to know. I was on a cliffhanger.
I'm sorry.
Well, oh, no. Yeah, well, there are a bunch. I mean, there's... Marin lives in this little cabin and in a row of... Mila lives in a little row of 3 cabins and with the 2 other interns at the farm. And so it's like the walk from the cabin to the main house and the schoolhouse and back, and all of these different routes that she takes. And the family, they bake sourdough bread and they make soup and they do all of these things day after day to maintain, because they have a bunch of adopted children who live there. And so there's a similar kind of feeling of the anchor. And I feel like many of us who have been sheltering in place have also had these anchors for ourselves and these daily rituals, or at least have we're striving for that. And we're also in the process of letting go of a world, the world that we knew, right? And the lives that we knew, and the freedom to move around, to whatever degree we had it before. And now we're figuring out what the world is going to look like now. And I think that's very much what Mila's journey is. And so it's interesting. I mean, of course, I didn't plan that, but I found that as I've been thinking about it, it does have that resonance right now. But I would like to go on to a nicer world, a kinder, more lovely world right now. And so, Adib, my question for you is that Darius the Great Deserves Better presents something of an idealized world. And you were talking about this a little bit earlier, I think, when you were saying about, making a world a little bit kinder for younger readers or a little sunnier. And I know I haven't gotten to read your book yet, but I know that Darius's teammates support and defend his queerness when historically places like that haven't been as welcoming to queer people. And I just want to know more about what made you want to explore that, what made you cast this world in a sunnier light.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it came from my own, growing up, even though, A, I didn't figure out I was gay for a really long time, and then B, didn't come out even longer after that. But, I don't know, I was always othered by my classmates for being Iranian or just for being a little weird. And so sports were something that I, never felt welcome in, which, I don't know, it still makes me kind of sad to this day because as I've gotten older, I feel like I've missed out on something. Not that anyone has to play sports, but I actually kind of enjoy them now. And I really wanted to explore what it would be like if you were in a supportive environment. In particular, I felt when you're in school, kind of no matter how terrible life is, if you can find your people, things get a little better. For me, being a theater kid, I still got bullied a lot, but at least when I was in rehearsal, that was my happy place. And I wanted to explore what it could be like in a different environment. And I also knew that that there are a lot of teachers and coaches out there that are trying to move their own spheres into a more inclusive place. And I kind of was interested in exploring what what the endpoint of that might be. And also just from a craft level, I'm just really bad at writing people being mean to each other. And so it was easier if I had everyone be nice because it's hard to be mean to people in writing. I find, at least. That's always when I get stuck in writing, is when I have to have people fight with each other. And I'm like, crap, what do I do? Just because I'm a pretty cheery, non-confrontational person. So, I don't know, it's challenging. I feel like I swerved very widely on what the answer.
No, that was a beautiful answer.
No. I've just been rambling. Someone get the shepherd's crook, please.
No, that was gorgeous. And true, you are a very nice person. Very nice person. Except when you're doing
All
a very
clever
amazing Moira Rose impersonations. So that and David impersonations as well.
Oh, I miss them so much.
I do too.
I think, and wait, are you about to admit that you don't watch Schitt's Creek?
I wasn't going to say anything.
Our friendship just ended. Our friendship has just ended.
No, it's
name your top
breaking up.
Rose wigs.
Candy wrapper.
Just saying, what? Did you disconnect? No, that's terrible. All right, then Adib can ask a question because I don't want to talk to you, Arvin.
Okay, that's fair. So Arvin, what are your 3 favorite Moira Rose wigs?
This is that nightmare everyone gets where you're waking up and it's a pop quiz or an exam you didn't study for. Right,
that's fair. I will go ahead and tell you my number one favorite is the one that she literally wears inside out because she's depressed.
I do feel like Queer Eye, it's kind of, or with Schitt's Creek, it's kind of like Queer Eye, where I haven't watched either show, but I feel like I'm proficient, if not fluent, in the characters, the personas, the memes.
That's fair. Okay, but my real question.
I also have this theory that anyway, whatever.
No, I want your theory now. Let it all out.
I think Schitt's Creek is like CrossFit for Twitter people.
Look, that's
it was like, oh, you watched Schitt's Creek? I had no idea.
It's mildly offensive.
As a CrossFitter, that's fair.
Did I ever tell you about the time I got ambushed by a group of CrossFitters at brunch?
No, but I want to know the story now.
That's
Maybe
a
not
story.
now, but you have to tell me the story in the
That's a
future.
story for another day, but it led to a very positive change in my life because I was having back pain at the time, and I joked to them about having like, oh yeah, I have a right. One of them asked if I did CrossFit, and I was like, do you see me? I'm 25 and I have back pain. I have what I call a writer's body. No one laughed. Like I thought I was being funny, and no one laughed. That's when I was like, oh, that's not healthy.
That's hilarious.
I went to physical therapy, and it all got better. So
I'm glad to hear that.
that's my CrossFit story. And I feel like Schitt's Creek people have kind of positively changed me in ways too.
That's excellent.
Good.
Okay, so for the real question, though, I'm actually really interested in how Amir kind of starts the story basically by running away from things he doesn't want to face. But then it's like over the course of his ends up really kind of running toward, who he wants to be, even if he didn't realize it at first. And I'm curious if that was kind of always your intention, or if that was something you discovered along the way, and kind of what made you want to explore that in general.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been really fascinated by the idea of running away. I mean, when I was 16, I actually ran away from home for like 12 hours. But then I gave up because the logistics of it were just, too much.
Did you pack a little rolling suitcase to take with you?
That's the thing. I think I didn't pack anything. I had like a bunch of quarters in my pocket, and I hopped on the Metro bus and wound up in DC. I really didn't plan it out. And then, from 16 to, now I've read The Catcher in the Rye like a million times. It's one of my favorite books. And so I just think there's like, it's this idea that like distance is clarity, right? You get away from your problems, but actually it enables you to kind of think about them more clearly. So I think that's what happens with Amir to an extent, but in a way that he didn't even see, where he goes away, he leaves his real family and meets this new queer family in Italy who accept him wholeheartedly. But it does make him. It does get him to realize kind of like the chances that he didn't give his real family. So it's an opportunity for reflection, I would say. It kind of reminds me of how, growing up, I never wanted to eat Iranian food because I had it kind of around me all the time. But then I went to college, and all of a sudden I missed not just the food, but the music, the mehmonis, just other parts of the culture, the language, so much. It was that distance that brought me closer to that part that I'd always taken for granted. Yeah, and so I just think there's something so special and classic about runaway stories, but we haven't kind of gotten, that classic coming of age story, that kind of like the effects of running away and distance on these very specific intersectional experiences. We have so many classic coming of age runaway stories for white boys, angry white boys, angsty white boys. Holden Caulfield, love him to death. Told that story a bunch of times. Jamie and Claudia, Mixed Up Files of Miss Paisley Frankweiler, another one of my favorites. But I want to see more runaway stories about people like Amir.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Also,
it.
sidebar, I also went to college and suddenly was like, where's all the Iranian food?
Yeah. It's like that. I think it was like that for everything that we thought we hated growing up. It's like siblings too. I know. I knew so many people who got closer with their siblings and argued less with their siblings when they went away for college, when there was some distance between them. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Well, and this kind of actually leads into our very first question from the audience, and this is from Hoping for Nash, and they wanted to know what is one thing you've all been doing for self-care in 2020, which I think is a great question. So Nina, what about you? What have you been doing?
Well, I have been trying to take time. Well, so I'm one of the people with a small child who is not going to school anymore, right when I just got used to the freedom of 6 hours a day for the first time in, quite a long time. So my life has been pretty chaotic, and just with my work day kind of vanished. My wife is on work calls all day long. She has one of those jobs where it's conference call after conference call, and my daughter's running around our apartment. And so the thing that I have been doing, which is very small, but very nice, is I have just been walking onto our back porch when I have a moment and sitting on the back steps and looking out over the view of San Francisco and maybe drinking tea if I have it, and just taking a few minutes and not doing anything and not having my phone out there with me. And that is one small thing that feels good to me every single time I do it.
I think not having the phone is like the key half the time. It's just the incoming everything that feels so much. Arvin, what about you? Anything particular besides not watching Schitt's Creek? What else are you doing that's not so?
Oh my God!
I love you.
I love you guys too, and I love the Schitt's Creek dip.
I do have to just jump in and say that one of the other things I've been doing for self-care is starting Schitt's Creek from the very beginning over again.
If this is a pressure, I don't know what it is.
I binged Veep. I watched all 7 seasons of Veep, which, like one of the greatest comedies of all time. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a genius actress. That was definitely an act of self-care.
Well, what about you, Adib? What's self-care?
We have a pretty great, thriving community of writers here in the Kansas City area, some on the Missouri side and some on the Kansas side. And so usually about once a week, we'll all get on a big Zoom call for what I like to call the wine and wine. One wine with an H and one wine without an H. Like back before the quarantine times, usually at least once a week, we'd all, or at least a chunk of us would get together and write together, like in a coffee shop. And so it still brings a little bit of that energy and lets us feel connected and lets us vent a little bit about how hard life is and sometimes about how hard the publishing industry can be. But it just, I don't know, it always makes me feel a lot less lonely.
Yeah. You guys need to get onto the word whinge, which is basically the adult of wine. It's in Australia and English, Commonwealth English, it's whinge, WHINGE.
But there's no alcohol that rhymes with that.
Yeah, but you get to call someone a whingy pants. And whiny pants doesn't have the same effect. A whingy pants is just a little bit more through.
That's fair.
Well, speaking of talking about publishing things, Abby Hagan wants to know have you had a favourite moment in your journey as an author at an event or something else that you still remember to this day? And I'll go to you, Nina. You've probably had the longest career of the panel.
Ooh,
so far.
Gosh, I mean, I think one of the things that stands out to me is when people just drive or fly to an event. That's just the most incredible thing. I mean, not drive a few minutes, but drive hours and hours and hours. I when I was on tour for the paperback of We Are Okay, I remember, I think it was the North Carolina stop. People had driven 9 hours to get there. And I just thought, that's just amazing. It's just I can't even imagine. And it just made me feel, tours can be very tiring and, stressful and all of that. And then to be there and just think wow, because I came, all the way across the country to this one place, these people who really wanted to come and see me read and meet me drove all that way to be there. I think it just kind of makes everything more than worth it. It's just incredible.
Mm-hmm. And Adib, is there a moment for you that really stands out in the journey so far?
It's funny, Nina, mentioning driving things, because back when I was still working on Darius, the very first Darius, and getting ready to start sending it out to agents, I myself drove 4 hours to go see Jandy Nelson when she was in Wichita.
Aww.
And apparently someone at the bookstore, Watermark Books and Cafe, told her that someone had driven all this time to come see her. And so she came out and said hello. And we got to talk, and I told her about the story. And she's like, oh, that sounds really great. I bet it'll be published someday. And then it was published someday. And now Jandy and I are friends. And it's very weird and full circle. That always, that's always stuck with me. How kind she was. Because she did not have to come and talk to anyone before the event, because events are exhausting.
Yeah. I also have to say that I have benefited from your friendship with Jandy, because I don't know if you know that Jandy and I bought a duplex together in San Francisco.
I did. I was there for the big reveal.
Oh, yes. Oh, I remember now. Yes. But she has in her cupboard is full of tea, like the kind of tea that you recommended for her to get. And so when we were like planning this purchase and the months leading up to it, because she's lived up there for a very long time. But like when we were planning, I would come over and we would sit and go over paperwork and drink tea. And every time we drank tea, she would say, "We're drinking this tea because of Adib."
Oh. I think I saw those recommendations go down on Twitter too. Is that where you recommended teas to her?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
You've become like the tea master of YA, Adib. This is like now your thing. You are.
It's a brand.
Yeah, it's a brand. I like it as a brand. It's a good brand.
Yeah. Felicity, Recca-tea? You guys have
Recca-tea. We could have Recca-tea. I love it. That's going to have to happen now. That's going to have to happen. Arvin, has there been anything for you that's on this journey of being published or afterwards really stuck out?
Actually, yes, and it's so interesting because I've always given the same answer, but now with, How It All Blew Up coming out, it's especially relevant, on the nose. It was finding out that, one of my favorite writers, one of my role models, had read Down and Across and given us a blurb. And I actually... got an email. So Paul Hosseini, he wrote The Kite Runner. He was, The Kite Runner was probably the first novel that I read that I really saw myself in, and kind of changed my perspective on what kind of stories are allowed to be told. And so I got the email that he had, he had that we gotten a blurb from him when I was actually on an airplane, right when we landed. When you land, you get service again, and all your texts and emails come in, and it's usually just like 4 texts from mom and maybe a spam email. This time, it was an email from my editor saying that Khaled Hosseini had blurbed Down and Across, and that moment meant so much to me because I wrote this really heartfelt letter about how much his books meant to me, but I never thought that he would read it, let alone respond, let alone look at the book. And I remember feeling so happy and giddy that I wanted to, like a Y character, I wanted to kind of like jump up and scream to the airplane, "I got a blurb from Khaled Hosseini." But in that moment I stopped and I was like, wait a minute, these people don't know what a blurb is. His name is Khaled Hosseini and I am me. And so I stayed sitting down and I remember thinking and this is why we need stories about kids like Scott Ferdosi and eventually Amir Azadi to normalize them as, teenagers with regular feelings who are going on adventures just like Holden and Claudia and Jamie. So yeah, it was just a whole lot of emotions in that moment because I really did want to get up and scream to the plane about the Khaled Hosseini blurb, but then really did stop myself just because of what I thought it might meant or imply.
Well, and speaking of amazing blurbs, though, you got an amazing blurb from YA royalty for How It All Blew Up.
Yes, Angie Thomas, another favorite of mine. That that one I was not on a plane, I was in my apartment, but I paced my apartment 50 times after that blurb came in because her books, I love her 2 books so much and look up to her as an author and an activist.
For sure. Well, speaking of authors asking questions and providing feedback, a young Julian Winters would like to know, without spoilers, what was your favourite part or scene of your upcoming book and which parts were the most challenging? Adib, kick us off.
My favorite scene is, I don't think it's too spoilery to say, but Darius and one of his soccer teammates, Chip, have become friends, and Darius is over at Chip's doing homework, and Chip's niece flips a bowl of Cheerios, and so he just ends up with Cheerios in his hair, and it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those, it felt like a very human moment to me of just oh, these are the kind of random things that happen when you just have friends. And for me, the most challenging scene was definitely spoiler territory.
What was the most challenging scene of Darius is not okay? Darius the Great's not okay.
The most challenging scene of the first Darius was definitely when Darius and Sohrab have their big fight toward the end. Because I had to really kind of dig deep into what kind of pain they were both going through, and that was definitely hard for me. I just want everyone to get along.
just be friends. What about you, Nina? What was the most challenging for Watch Over Me?
It took me a while to get the end right, like the very, very last, couple of pages. I have kind of a big event in the book that happens before that, but then it still needed an ending, and it took me till the very last second to get it right. Yeah, and then, but the most fun, I love the setting so much that whenever I got to describe the setting, like I just couldn't, I was never tired of it because it's just such a beautiful place. So all the setting scenes.
All the settings. Yeah. It's very atmospheric, very moody. I love it. Arvin, what about you? What's been the funnest and the most challenging?
Well, the most fun scene to write was definitely Amir's date in the Sistine Chapel. It basically gave me an excuse to go back to Italy because somehow during my summer there, I didn't actually get to see the Sistine Chapel, which is funny because I specifically remember being in a bookstore at one point that summer and picking up this German writer, and he'd written this book on his own kind of year spent in Italy, and he had this line in there that one is not capable of knowing, or one cannot comprehend what mankind is truly capable of until they've seen the Sistine Chapel. It's a beautiful line, and yet for some reason I had no interest in comprehending what mankind is capable of that summer. So the following year, while I was writing How It All Blew Up, I was actually visiting my sister in Spain because she was studying abroad there. My mom was like, "Go check up on your sister. You're a writer. You don't have a real job." And so I think for just 1 or 2 nights, I bought like a cheap Ryanair flight and went over to Italy and visited my friends and spent a day doing research at the Vatican, which was so much fun. It was just a whole day where I brought my notebook and kind of just walked around this site and looked at it through the eyes of an 18-year-old, and specifically the eyes of an 18-year-old on a date. And so it was a lot of fun. And it's probably my favorite chapter.
Yeah, that's amazing. Who here had a parent that was like, "How are you ever going to make a living as a writer?" and now is eating their own words because writing turned out to be a fairly stable career in the mild apocalypse?
Right.
Show notes.
Right.
That's amazing. Now, before we go, there was a question I wanted to ask you guys that came from the comment section, but I know we're going over the hour. So if anyone needs to leave, let us know. But I'm holding you all hostage.
Time is a Jell-O salad.
I've got you for Saturday night.
That are studded with ham.
Yeah. Zohar wants to know is that when was the first time you came across an LGBT character that you felt represented you, and how did that inspire your own writing of LGBT characters? And I really wanted to get that question to you guys. So Nina, do you want to talk about that first?
Sure. Reading Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson was really the first book that kind of blew my mind in that way. I didn't relate to all of the book. It's a semi-autobiographical novel, but it's about growing up in a very strict religious household, and that was not my experience at all. But just the depiction of the young character falling in love with this other girl, this friend of hers, and what that meant for them was just so incredibly illuminating and meaningful to me.
What about you, Arvin?
Can we go to Adib first? I need to just look at my bookshelf. My bookshelf is right here, but
that's handy.
I was in high school when my senior year we did the Laramie Project, and that was like my first exposure to queer literature. But it's also very tragic and sad. And the first time I remember reading a book about like a gay kid or just a gay person in general that like felt happy and hopeful, I think probably was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. That was the first time where I just like finished the book and I was like, yeah, like it's totally cool.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, I was just thinking before I looked at my bookshelf, and I think I actually had the right answer, which is More Happy Than Not, which just feels so weird to say that was like the first meaningful LGBT book I read, because Adam is now one of my best friends. And I just don't think we've ever had a conversation about how his was really the first.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a follow on from that for all three of you is, do you hear from readers often about how important that is to you, and what does that really mean to you? I mean, we're heading into Pride for so many of our readers who are at home alone too. What does it mean to you as authors to have that feedback, to hear from them about how important representation is for them? Who wants to go first?
I can go. Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. I love it so much. My favorite ever is when girls ask me to sign Everything Leads to You to like send to their girlfriends as gifts. I've gotten that one several times, and I wrote that novel like specifically because I wanted to write a happy, joyful novel about two girls falling in love, and so that it always makes me feel great to hear from readers that way.
Mm-hmm. And Arvin, do you hear from a lot of readers?
You know, especially with this new book, like the book isn't even out yet, and I'm already so excited for what it will mean to certain readers, and for what it already means. You know, less than 24 hours after it was announced, I got this like giant DM from a reader in Iran, just talking about how happy it made them to hear that a book like this was going to be published and how they couldn't wait to read it. You know, they never thought that they would come out in their life, you know, because of their circumstance, you know, living in a country, living there, like that. You know, it's just like that. It was going to mean so much for them to feel like themselves for just a few hours, for just the, you know, over the course of these pages. Like that was going to mean the world. And that I just, again, like, you know, the book wasn't even out yet. There weren't even early copies out yet. We just announced it. And already I was getting such a unique form of love from people that I'd never met.
And Adib, did you have a similar experience?
Somewhat. Sometimes it has felt a lot like being Spider-Man in that it's like really wonderful to have this influence, but also it's like a very powerful responsibility. And like I do a lot of school visits, and I visit a lot of like queer student alliances, and sometimes I'll get asked advice on like coming out or dealing with things, and I'm like, oh, like you always have to put your safety first, and like I don't know, it can be really really scary to think that like what if I'm giving the wrong advice and like doing harm. But at the same time, it also feels really kind of ecstatic to be helping young people find a new community that maybe they hadn't found before. And that feels kind of euphoric. So I don't know. It's really awesome and really scary at times too.
Yeah. I think that's the whole experience. Awesome and scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I really could talk to you all night long. There are so many questions that I want to ask. I know there's lots of questions people want to ask. So if you haven't had your question asked, all of these lovely authors are on social media. You can follow them on either Instagram or Twitter. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions. But before we go, we have to do the obligatory book promotional plug thing. So I have a little game for you all. I'm going to go with Arvin first. Arvin, can you please summarize how it feels to float in only how it feels to float? Sorry, how it all blew up. You like Felicity? That's not my book. That's not my book.
By Helena Fox. Love to cover author.
I mean, that's a great book, but I think yours is one we want to talk about more. Is can you tell us how it all blew up in 3 words only?
Sure. Yeah, so if you're into how books, there is also How It All Blew Up in 3 words. Oh my God, going me first. It's freeing, adventure, and quirky.
I like that.
Freeing, quirky.
3 great words. 3 great words. So for everyone watching, How It All Blew Up is out this September. So you can pre-order now. Obviously, we love a pre-order. It encourages great things. Or you could get it when it comes out in September. And I'm sure Arvin will be doing lots of chats and conversations in the lead up and as that goes on. So you won't be able to miss the man, if I have my way. All right, Adib, you're up. It's time to talk about Darius. Let's talk about the 3 words. 3 words, all less. What did you say? I missed it already.
Oh, life-changing haircut.
Life-changing haircut. Ooh, mysterious. Well, Darius the Great is out this August, so it obviously is sequel. Is it? Would you call it a hard direct sequel? You don't have to have read Darius the Great is Not Okay, do you?
I think we worked really hard to make it so that it stands on its own, and having read the first one will deepen the experience, but it's still going to be, I think, hopefully super enjoyable and super gay and super delicious regardless.
Yeah, that's actually 3 other great words, although they're four really, but super gay and super delicious. I love those two as well. Amazing. All right, Nina, I'm saving you for last.
All right. I feel like I cheated because we just did this the other day, Felicity.
Oh, I know.
No, but it came to me then
too.
I know. Haunting, atmospheric, and emotional.
Yes. They're all great words. That's the right words for it too. Guys, I want to first of all thank you so much for being part of this panel. It was such a pleasure to talk to you all this afternoon. Arvin, Nina, and Adib, all of their books are out this fall, and you can pre-order them now from all good bookstores. Thank you for everyone in the comments for your lovely comments and questions and feedback. There was such love for our panelists and all of the great things you guys were saying. You can obviously, of course, follow them on their social media channels on Twitter and Instagram. You can share the love for their books to your friends and family. Otherwise, we hope you have a rest of a great BookCon weekend. We'll see you at Trivia tonight. We've got our Penguin 2020 preview tomorrow evening, as well as our Sabbath to Hear preview show. So lots more still to come on Penguin Teen, and make sure you follow us for all the details. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Saturday night. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.